Alright, what's going on? So this is just going to be a quick overview of how to set up a mod selection utilizing class names and your pathing for your at workshop folder utilizing firedaemon. Other third-party server, I guess, administration sites such as firedaemon may utilize the same system, but this is going to be specifically to firedaemon. So starting off, you want to utilize your parameter line. Now this line should automatically be generated by your server when you set it up using the Arma 3 servers app on your server box. However, if it's not, there's a whole process and you can find tons of guides online how to generate this parameter line, but that's for another video. This is to say you already have your parameter line, you have vanilla settings set up on your server, and you just want to add mods. So the first thing you want to do is find your exclamation point workshop pathing. This is our pathing for our server box here. This is a pretty standard pathing, so if it's not this, it's going to be something close to this. This folder by default is hidden. However, just because, as most of you know, just because a folder's hidden doesn't mean it's not there. So as you can see, all this is doing is calling individual mod class names, and you can find all these class names here. So if I go to Arma 3 and I go to mods, and this is on my actual computer, not the box, and I open it up in folder, as you can see, it's calling that exact path. And even though in Arma 3 this is shaded, which means this is hidden, but I have it unhidden, it's still in that folder, and it's just calling your individual mod class names. So essentially you would just make a document like this, just so that you can keep everything in check. And I would start out by just labeling a bunch of these paths out, right? Just like this. So just a bunch of those paths. And any mods you want to put up on your server, I would just find the class name of them, right? So when I'm going, I would just go right here, and this is how I do it. So let's say I want to add CBA to my server. I just copy that, and I put it right here in the class name. Boom, just like that. So this is, again, what the server box or what firedaemon's going to do when it boots up the server. When you put it in the parameter line, which I'm going to show you as well, it's going to follow this path, and it's going to call the PBOs from this path, whatever at the end of this path. And at the end of this path, it's the CBA PBOs. And you just go on and on and on and on. Once you have, let's do one more. Let's just say, RHS, RHS, something like that. So let's say you're finished, right? You only want to put those two mods on your server. How the command line has to read them is there has to be a semicolon and they have to be connected, right? So once these are complete, again, I just go all the way down with them, boom, just like this. Once they're complete, I always just go down the line, put in a semicolon right here, right? And then I just go to the C's and I connect them just like this, because it has to be a string of connectable pieces right there. Boom. And that's your command line right there. Alright. It's pretty simple. Big things with this is just take it slow. Make sure you have dependencies. And if you miss anything like a comma, if you put a space in there, if you don't put a semicolon, it's going to mess up the entire server. And unless it's a space, firedaemon's not going to tell you what's wrong. So this is a pretty crucial portion, taking this extremely slow and making sure you crossed your T's and dotted your I's, just so everything is squared away. Just some small keynotes. Ensure that if you're going to put a mod on your server using firedaemon, that mod needs to be downloaded on the box. So it's pretty simple. I mean, if you make an HTML, you can just copy and paste the HTML over to your server box, or you can just log in to a Steam account on your server box and download the mods just like we have here. And then when you're done with the mod, when you're done with that operation, you just delete the mod from your server box to save space. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to actually put the parameter mod command line that you just made onto the server box, right? So here's an example of our stalker selection. And I just went through and I made the entire one just like I did. So set up a bunch of blank pathings, found all the class names, and then put semicolons and connected them all. So essentially all you're going to do is copy this, right? Copy. It's pretty simple. People do this a bunch of different ways. People go ahead and make the whole parameter line, but I like to do it like this so I know I never mess up. When I go to firedaemon and I have the server set up here, right? And whatever server I want to put it on, obviously I go to edit and I have edit perms. This is that parameter command line I told you about here. If we were to start this server just like this, it would just start with vanilla settings. There would be no mods, you know, nothing extra to it. It would just start with vanilla settings. So what you do is, Arma 3 makes it pretty easy with these parameter lines. You should see, you know, quotations mod equals, and then for you it's just going to be blank, but for us we already have a command line in there. So what I would do is I would just copy all the way to the end of the quotations, and then I just paste right there, and that's it. So this is pretty much saying when this parameter starts up through firedaemon, it's going to follow those pathings and call whatever PBOs are at the end of the pathings. At that point, you're done. Again, keynote is make sure that you take this part slow, because unless there's a space in here, it's not going to tell you that something's wrong unless you sift through the RDP files. Additionally, if you're going to put a mod through a third-party system like firedaemon, it needs to be installed on your server box. And that's pretty much it. You save, and now your mods are updated on the server. Alright, so list of issues that can come up. Again, like I said, I started my server. Always test your server. Never just load and forget, right? So when I come into it, we see this right here. This immediately something's wrong, right? This server's not running correctly. If you look at the bottom corner, it tells me that entities, a vehicle in the cburn command, which is a cburn mod, is not loading correctly, right? So your first instinct should always be check out that mod on the command line. See what the issue is. Some things can affect that. One of them is, again, you don't have the mod downloaded on the server box, because the way that we use pathing, there are some ways to put mods on your server box where they just call them through the client, but the way that we're doing it, it's following a specific path and pulling specific PBOs from your server box, so it needs to be downloaded on the server box. Another way, and the way that this happened, if I bring up the firedaemon here, is again, I rush on the command line, which means something is wrong on the command line. So if I go to the cburn mod, if I find my cburn mod here, and we look around for it, let me see if I can find it. Right here, if you see that, I put the semicolon before the C, right? So this needs to be like this. Boom, see that? And it doesn't tell you, it's a silent killer, right? So make sure you don't rush. I didn't take my own advice, I guess. And see, so you just go back through, do the same thing, find the mod, find the C, start there, come all the way this way, and then paste. Boom. And then save it, and then now we can test it, and we'll see if it works this time. So again, that's, I mean, perfect example of how you need to take your time, because the mod, again, until you put up the server, until you check that RDP file, it's not going to tell you you're doing something wrong, right? So you're just going to assume everything's fine. The only time that firedaemon will tell you you're doing something wrong is if you put a period or a space where it's not supposed to be. So if I were to put a space right here, when I pasted that, it would stop right at the C. And you'll be like, why isn't it pasting the whole line? And that's why, because firedaemon's telling you something is wrong, whether you have a space or a period. But as far as semicolons, commas out of place, it's just going to count those as that's the class name of that mod. Alright, so now let's see if it works. Alright, so coming back, here's another issue that can arise. So when it says something does not exist, right? When something does not exist, that means in Eden, right, when you're making the mission in Eden, you put an entity down, right? So you put a Humvee down, right, from one of your mods. When the server went to load that mission and it went to find that entity that you put down inside of your mods, it can't find them, right? So another issue, right? I keep bringing this up, is you didn't download that mod to your server box. So that's one issue. Another issue is good old fashioned Steam is you didn't add that one to your command line, right? So if we go back to the mission and we're clicking this right here, and we can see that it's throwing an error. So again, just follow the class name. So the name is Ryan's Z modules, right? So that's probably right? If I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would say that's Ryan's Zombies and Demons, right? So if we go to my command line, we can see that I forgot to put Ryan's Zombies and Demons on here. Alright, so again, it tells you what's wrong when you boot up the server. So I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to put Ryan's Zombies and Demons. So again, how do we add mods? There's two because there's an ace compatibility. So I just put two of our base pathings down. And then I search for it through here. So looking for Ryan's, I find those class names. Alright, so Zombies and Demons right here. Again, open folder in Windows Explorer, you understand. And I always do this, I never freehand it, because you're going to fuck it up if you freehand it. So I copy that, paste it right here, boom, put that class name, now it's going to call that path, and then I do it for the integration as well. So Zombies and Demons, Ace integration, rename, boom. Put it right here, and it's going to call that path. So again, what do? At the end, put a semicolon. At the end right here, I put a semicolon, and then I make them conjoining lines. And then remember, you're going to have that set of quotations at the end. So you don't put a semicolon at the beginning, the far beginning, right here, and don't put a semicolon at the end. Everything else is the same. All right, so now, same way I did it last time. I just update the command line. So I go to firedaemon, running, and turn it off. Can't update it when the server's running, obviously, because that wouldn't make sense. Let it do its thing. Once it's stopped, I edit, come over, find the mod equals, go to the C, go all the way across, and I update just like that. Alright, so now we're going to test the server after fixing those two issues. And boom, we load in. There can be other issues that arise, but if you get to this screen here, then it's not going to be a command line issue. If you start loading in and then it gives you CFG errors or it gives you other errors, it's going to be an actual PBO compatibility issue. Normally with Ace, Ace lets you load in all the way until it starts calling those assets, and then Ace will kick you out. So if you start getting kicked out midway through your load, or even right when you load in, it's normally going to be, let's say you're using RHS, you don't have your Ace compatibility for RHS, which is required to run Ace and RHS together. So things of that nature. So another reason that those two issues can arise on startup is you have a different version on your box than you do on client. So let's say RHS updated, right? And you updated on your client, right? Because the second you start up Arma, you should have automatic updates, and it updates. Your box generally does not have automatic updates because when you run a server, it's going to cut all ties to Steam. That's why you can't utilize Steam on your box and have an Arma server running at the same time. So what you need to do every couple days with your box is turn off all your servers, go ahead and close Steam, log back into Steam. I go to Arma 3 and I let all my, you're going to see, if you don't do it for a while, you're going to have like 5 or 6 mods that are out of date. And you'll be like, oh crap, these mods have been out of date for a minute. And what the issue can arise is, let's say RHS updated, and that's a main compatibility for your mission, and you put down a Humvee that RHS added, or an MRAP that RHS added on your mission in Eden. When you put that mission on the box, right, and you haven't updated RHS, the parameter line is going to follow that path and try to pull that PBO, that Humvee that you put down in Eden, through RHS. But it's not going to be there on the box because you're running an older version on the box. So it's going to throw you those issues, focused on downloadable content that doesn't exist, things of that nature, and you're just going to get that line of issues. If you have any issues on startup, on load-in, there's 3 things that I would check initially before you start diving into RTP files and trying to troubleshoot in crazy ways. First thing I would do is check the command line. Make sure everything's squared away. You have commas where they're supposed to be. You have semicolons where they're supposed to be. All the class names are good. If that's good, right, and I strongly recommend you don't work from firedaemon. I strongly recommend you have a sheet like this, and you can lock it, make it view only, and then pass it out to all your Zeuses so they are aware of how to do this as well. Just because it's easier to work in here than it is in firedaemon. So once that's squared away, the second thing is I would ensure that all the mods you're trying to call via the server box path are actually downloaded on your server box. So the PBOs are actually present, and there's an actual at name to call at the end of this path when firedaemon calls that path. And the third thing, I would make sure that your client side mods that are updated match the server box mods, and both have the same date, same by keys, everything is updated and correct, and you shouldn't get any errors at startup unless there's a compatibility issue. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of other stuff that can go wrong, but those are just things you kind of pick up. These are the three big ones that can go awry when updating command lines on the server box.